Hello, children. Today I am here with the poem Macavity, the Mystery Cat from the book Honeydew of Class 8. Children, before explaining the poem, I would like to tell you something about the poet who has written this poem. The poem is written by a great modern poet named T.S. Eliot. His full name is Thomas Stearns Eliot, but he is better known as T.S. Eliot. He was an American English poet. Besides the poet, he was a playwright, literary critic, and editor. T.S. Eliot was born on September 26, 1888 in America. Later on, he settled in London. He is considered one of the major poets of 20th century. His father was a successful businessman, industrialist, and his mother was a teacher and a social worker. She wrote poetry also. On January 4, 1965, Eliot died of lung disease at the age of 76. Eliot has great love for literature. He was awarded with the Nobel Prize in Literature for his outstanding pioneer contribution to present-day poetry. The notable works of T.S. Eliot include The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, The Wasteland, collection of poems The Hollow Man, Ash Wednesday, etc. He has written poems in light verse, and the poem Macavity is also written by T.S. Eliot to amuse the young readers. Macavity, the Mystery Cat. Let's come to the detailed explanation. Macavity is a mystery cat. He is called the Hidden Paw, for he is the master criminal who can defy the law. Is the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squads despair, for when they reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. The poem Macavity, the Mystery Cat, consists of 4 stanzas. In the very first stanza, the poet is introducing Macavity by describing that he is criminal, he is notorious, and he is called the Hidden Paw. As the criminals or the notorious people, they are also known by their nicknames. So this Macavity is also known by the Hidden Paw. Hidden Paw means Macavity is not traced by anybody. He is the master criminal. He is the criminal of higher quality who can defy the law. He is such a monster that breaks every law, and he is the bafflement of Scotland Yard. He creates confusion for the Scotland Yards. Here, Scotland Yards refers that police force in London. Whenever the flying squads they go to the place where some crime has been committed, they are despair. They are not happy, they are hopeless, because they find no sign or no trace of Macavity. Coming to the second stanza, Macavity, Macavity, there is no one like Macavity. Here, the poet is describing that there is no other cat like Macavity. He has broken every human law, he breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare, and when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. You may seek him in the basement, you may look up in the air, but I tell you once and once again, Macavity is not there. Here, in the second stanza, the poet, as already stated here, there is no one like Macavity, as he breaks all the laws of nature or human. His powers of levitation, he is so powerful that he can float in the air, and this power makes a fakir stare, means wonder. Fakir also wonders to see the powers of levitation. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. A fakir is considered that he can create wonders, he can do something impossible to possible. Macavity is not there when you reach the scene of crime. You may seek him in the basement under the surface, but he's not there. You may look up in the air, but I tell you once and once again, Macavity is not there. Wherever you go, whether under the earth or in the sky, you will not find Macavity. Macavity is a ginger cat. He is very tall and thin. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in. His brow is deeply lined with thought. His head is highly domed. Here, in the third stanza, the poet has described the physical appearance of this Macavity. The word tall and thin means that Macavity is tall and thin, and Macavity is a ginger cat. Ginger cat means Macavity's color is like ginger. You would know him if you saw him, for his eyes are sunken in, as his eyes are sunken and eyebrows are deeply lined with the thoughts, and head is round shaped. This is the physical appearance of the Macavity. His coat is dusty from neglect. His whiskers are uncombed. He sways his head from side to side with movement like a snake. And when you think he is half asleep, he is always wide awake. In these lines, the poet has described his nature of neglect. Here, his coat is dusty, but he hardly pays any attention. His whiskers are uncombed, then he never bothers about that. He sways his head from side to side with movements like a snake. And when you think he is half asleep, then Macavity is already awakened. Macavity, Macavity, there is no one like Macavity. For he is the find in a feline shape, a monster of depravity. You may meet him in a by street, you may see him in the square. But when a crime is discovered, then Macavity is not there. Now, let's talk about the fourth stanza, in which the poet has described the mystery cat as find. Find means devil. In feline. Feline means cat. So, this is the devil in the form of a cat. He is the monster deprived of morality. Monster of deprived of morality. You may meet him in by street. One can see him in the street or in the open area surrounded by the buildings, but when a crime is discovered, then Macavity is not there. The poet is trying to say that one can see Macavity, but when some crime is detected, then Macavity is not found. So, T.S. Eliot has taken Macavity as the main character in this poem instead of taking as human character. Though this poem is not serious as Macavity is doing such type of activities, or after reading what the Macavity is doing, the poem is humorous. It's light verse, but still we can say that somewhere there is obvious that the poet wants to convey the message of criminality that is prevailing in the society in the form of humans. Sometimes the humans, they commit the crimes, but they escape from the hands of police. In spite of taking a human character, the poet has taken Macavity as the protagonist. Now, come to the figure of speech used in the poem. So, the first is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial sounds of the words or initial letters of the words. Here, Macavity is a mystery cat. So, sound M is repeated. For he is the master criminal who can defy. So, criminal can. C, C. The sound K is repeated here. So, it's alliteration. Now, come to the repetition. Repetition is an act of repeating a word or phrase. Here, a word can be repeated in the poem and a phrase can also be repeated. So, the main aim of the repetition is to emphasize the idea that the poet wants to convey. Repetition used in the poem Macavity. Cavity is a mystery cat. He is called the hidden paw, for he is the master criminal who can defy the law. So here in this stanza, Macavity, and in the end, Macavity is not there. Macavity word is repeated in the last again, Macavity. So this is repetition. Now let's discuss refrain. Refrain, as I have already stated, that refrain is a type of repetition found in poetry. It's a kind of repetition. We can say refrain or repetition, but we can't say repetition or refrain, as repetition is in repetition the words are repeated, but in refrain the whole line in the poem is repeated. Then the kinds of repetition, they are anaphora and epiphora. Anaphora has the repetition at the beginning of a line, stanza, or a paragraph. If in a stanza the words are repeated in the beginning of the lines, then we say it's anaphora. And on the other hand, if the words are repeated at the end of the lines, then it's known as epiphora. Light verse is a kind of poetry that contains trivial, playful, or frivolous themes, as the poem Macavity is humorous poem and there is no such serious themes. We can say that in this poem there is some nonsensical theme. So it's light verse. When there is no serious theme and the poem is just for humor, then it is light verse. With this, the poem is finished. Thank you.